Now, this is an example of a conceptual framework. Okay. Now, we only have conceptual framework for quantity. We do not have conceptual framework for quality. Okay. Although before, 3 years ago, uh, the research office, there's some that uses conceptual framework for quali. But when we do conceptual framework for quali before, it's actually circle. Bilog-bilog siya. Okay? Hindi siya square. Kasi pag square na conceptual framework, quanti. Pero actually ngayon, pag sinabi mong quali, wala talagang conceptual framework. Okay? Quanti lang ang merong conceptual framework. Okay? So yeah, if you're going to look at this conceptual framework, you have the two headed arrows, okay? Pag two arrows that would tell us about the relationship, okay? So you have hospital pharmacies, live experiences, resiliency, coping, then moderator, years of service, stressors, and challenges, F, okay? So which of the following variables should be removed in this conceptual framework? Kasi nga, the fact that this is for quantity only, you should remove actually which you believe is quali, the term, the lived experiences, and the challenges. Okay? Kasi nga yan ay quali na mga term. You retain only the quantity na term. Okay? Now, in the conceptual framework, you have, now we no longer allowed or we no longer use two-headed na arrows. Isa lang yun ka arrow. Kahit na sabihin mo relationship, isang arrow from going to the DV. Okay? So, IV to the DV. The middle actually is the mediating variable. Okay? Actually, the reason why may confusion oftentimes sa mediating and moderating variable, kasi depende kinsa nga school of thought, ginabaligtad nila ang term ng mediating and moderating variable. But this one, may reference actually kasi is sa Creswell. Si Creswell, ang ginagamit niya for this one, pag nasa tunga, is a mediating variable. Okay? The mediating variable will actually tell us about the relationship, the possible relationship of the IV to the DV. Si moderating variable is dito because the moderating variable according to Creswell is an IV. Okay? It would actually tell the strength of the relationship of the IV to the DV. Okay? So si moderating is an IV. Si mediating actually is an intervening variable. Now, usually ano ang ginagamit? Anong mga variables in the quantity that are used for moderating and mediating? Profile, actually. Oo, profile. Parating profile ang ginagamit. Okay? That is why na ma-interchange si mediating o si moderating. Okay? So, the difference between a mediating variable itong nasa tunga, it explains the process through which two variables are related. So, itong dalawa. But the moderating variables explains the strength and direction of the relationship. The strength and direction of the relationship of the IV to the DV. Kasi yung strength of direction of the relationship, yung mga positive, negative na, ganyan. Okay? So, yan siya. So, yun yung difference ni moderating tsaka ni mediating. Although you have seen also na mga conceptual framework na kung pang-path siya, ang isang box mo is nandito and then yung arrow papunta kay dito sa gitna. Pero kung nasa gitna siya, pag ang arrow niya hindi ganito, it would mean it's not a mediating variable. Okay? So, it simply is another IV that somehow will have an influence on another IV depending on kung unsa nimo gi-frame out actually. Okay? So far, yun yung, kumbaga, ito yung basic. Okay? So, yan siya. Okay. So only after you have the conceptual framework that you can actually now do the statement of the problem. Why? Kasi you notice, mas dali actually maghimo og statement of the problem pag naana kay conceptual framework. Kasi automatically, if this is the IB, you just ask the question, what is the IB? What is the DB? Yan. And then, yung dalawa. Okay? If you have this one pa, what is the IB? You start with this one, profile. What is the IB? What's the DB? Then itong dalawa. Okay? That is for the quantity. Okay? So for quantity statement of the problem, what is IB? Then you have DB. And then IB to DB. Okay? If you have profile, you start with the profile, then IB, DB, then IB to DB. For the quali, you have live experiences. You start with live experiences. Then you have coping. Then you have insights. Although there are some research questions that ask about what are the challenges, okay? But my advice, do not write anymore the question about what are the challenges. Bakit man? Kasi if you ask kasi what are the challenges, it will actually come out in the lived experiences, yung mga challenges nila. So it would mean na magbalik-balik siya actually, malibog ka lang. So if you ask of the lived experiences, part na sa tanong mo is yung challenges nila. So after knowing the lived experiences, the challenges is yung coping na. And then the insights. So, kumbaga pa, in the quali, ito yung the usual na tinatanong mo na 3 questions. But you can actually innovate, do other questions, or use other questions. There are quali questions na how, dalawa lang. Parehong how or parehong what. Depende actually on your conceptualization of your study. Okay, it's up to you. The next in the format, we have the significance of the study. So you have a discussion on how the result will be useful to the community. The etc. always parating si future researchers, diba? Okay, this one. In your format, you have scope and limitation. Tama ba yun? Or scope and delimitation. Ang ginawa ko lang
Delimitation daw.
delimitation, scope and delimitation. Okay, scope and delimitation. Okay. I did not write anymore the scope and delimitation kasi I know you know naman already yung how to go into the scope, to write the scope. I put here limitation and delimitation of the study because so far kasi yun kasi yung mga ginagamit na ngayon na nakikita sa journals actually, even sa formatting natin sa graduate school. Pero if you stick with scope and delimitation, okay ramang gihapon na siya. Ang ano ko lang dito is, ang purpose ko is so that we would be able to differentiate the limitation and the delimitation of the study. Kasi actually malibog gani usahay gani sa difference ng dalawa. So in the limitation of the study, you're actually focusing on things that the researcher do not have control, especially when it comes to data gathering. Okay, especially when it comes to the possible outcomes. Kasi there are times that researchers have this preconceived outcomes of the study. Okay, but unfortunately, the preconceived outcomes do not actually happen. So if those preconceived outcomes do not happen, so doon ka na mag-mention sa limitations. Ano kaya yung mga factors or instances, challenges in the environment that you think will affect the outcome of the study that you don't have control with? The limitation that is somehow you are now referring to in you as a researcher, what do you want to really focus in your study? Okay, ano yung mga boundaries that you have set for the study? That's something that you can control, the limitation. You intentionally control it because that's how you wanted to do it in your study. That's the delimitation. The limitation that is something that you don't have control with. Okay? So yun siya. So usually, both in the quantity and quality, you have limitations. Okay? But you can script out It's up to you if you include the limitation, but oftentimes we do the delimitation. It's clear na you wanted to focus only on something that you wanted to control in your study. It's up to you if what you are going to 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 limit to focus on your study with. Okay? Nasa inyo na yan. Choice yan siya ng researcher. So, makontrol niya itong si delimitation. Okay, so definition of terms. Okay, we have conceptual definition and the operational definition. When you do conceptual definition, wala namang citation na siya. Then you have the operational definition based on how it will be in the study. In the quali, you don't have definition of terms in the qualitative study. Actually, naade siya. Meron pala, sorry. In the quali study, you have definition of terms. Usually what you're going to define only the words that come out in the title of the study. Yung nasa title lang, yun lang ang i-define ninyo. Okay? And define only the keywords important in the title. Okay? So, yun siya.